y'all, it's Vanessa with Farm Girl Gardens and Market, and welcome to my channel. This is our first video of 2021. Thank God last year is over. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm an edible garden coach and permaculture designer in North Central Texas, and I post a lot of videos here on how to grow things sustainably and affordably, and to just take on new grow endeavors that perhaps you haven't considered before. So one of the things that I love doing at the start of any year is a Dollar Tree garden haul and review. Now I do have a big garden Dollar Tree haul planned, but I picked up something super cute and fun and I wanted to let you guys know that it's out there before they all get sold out. So one of the things that the Dollar Tree has in abundance this time of year is planters. And this year, I don't know if it's new this year or I've just never had them, but they have these hard plastic rolling trays for your pots. They also have hanging baskets, or you can use them directly in the tray sets that go with it. So this is $2 to get this set. Now, for aesthetics, I love that these match and that they go together. And this pot in and of itself is not a bad deal for the depth and size of it. But something that I love doing and encouraging you to do is to just look at the entire store and to consider alternative uses for things. So even though this is not a bad size, if you go one aisle over in the kitchen section, they have these in a bunch of different colors. The greens didn't match and that bugged me too much. So I picked up the white one. You would want to go ahead and make some drain holes in these. You can just poke it with, a pen or a pocket knife, but it sits in here and creates a lot more space and surface area for you to work with. So rather than doing this one, I decided to pick up this container in the kitchen section and use it. And especially if you're using the base, it does make it a little bit more sturdy. And so that's how I'm going to be using it to plant container carrots. Now, in this area, which is 8A where I am, you can go ahead and plant carrots at will. Once they do start to sprout, if you do get a hard freeze, you may need to go ahead and give them some protection from that. But other than that, they are cold hardy. And especially if you're planting in hugelkultur, which is something I strongly encourage you to do and speak a lot about on this channel, then you're already a step ahead of the weather because your soil is actually exothermic. And as it's breaking down those layers of hugelkultur, it's releasing heat and energy and keeping your grow space a little bit warmer. But I'm actually going to be experimenting with growing these in my greenhouse. If you were an apartment dweller, this would be a great application to grow carrots in a container in your patio or on a windowsill that is not UV coated so that it can still get the sunlight. Now, the species that you plant is really what's going to be the deal breaker here. You're not going to be able to plant those finger length or long carrots if you're doing it in a container, but the Dollar Tree also does have seeds. They are 4 packs for $1. And they had these red cord Chantenay carrots. This is an heirloom variety, and it's actually a very short carrot. And so it's gonna top out, at max at like 5 inches, which is plenty of space for it to grow well in this container. One of the nice things about growing a shorter variety of carrot, especially if you are in Texas on heavy clay soils like we are, is that because it is shorter and because it tends to be girthier, I don't know if that's a word, it can really fight back in that clay soil, and it doesn't get as knobbly or have such a hard time getting established as some of those more fragile, carrot varieties like the rainbow carrots or even the Danvers. So I just thought this was beautiful that they had these, because what's nice about this is it does have a red core. So it's a little bit of a surprise when you crunch into it. Now, one thing with growing in containers is that you're not likely going to be using your outdoor soil, or if you are, you're going to want to do something to make sure that you're not bringing in any bugs or overwintering pests that might be in it. And so my suggestion for that, and this is more of a apartment or indoor dweller geared video, is that you would use a sterile sowing mix. One of the best values, in my opinion, and just ease of use of getting it, especially if you don't have a truck or don't need to haul bags around, is just go to Walmart and pick up these compressed bricks. Again, this is the time of year you're going to find them. It is about 8 pounds. It's heavy. You're going to compress it with warm water in a large tub. I just use an old Sterilite tub, and it will actually come out to about 2¼ cubic yards once it's fully hydrated. So I have through the wonder of YouTube, gone ahead and done that for y'all today. And you can just see that this stuff is really nice to work with, loose and friable. These carrots, even though they can handle heavy soil, they certainly are not gonna have to fight hard to get through there. Now, one suggestion that I have for you is because when you're creating a sowing mix, which is what this product is, it's actually made out of coconut coir. It's generally sterile, and so there's not a lot of good microbiota in this. The way that we're gonna address that is with a top dressing of liquid nutrition. Because I have worms and farm worms, I'm gonna be using a worm casting compost tea over top of it to water in my seeds and to create that biota that we want. But another thing that you can do is you can inoculate your soil with a handful of soil from outside, or if you compost, some good quality compost in that. If you are purchasing compost, my one caveat for you is that if you're in Texas especially, if it's in a plastic bag, it's not as good as something that you can either purchase from a neighbor who composts or that you can get from a garden center that might be in an open style bin. And that's just because when you put something that's alive in a plastic bag and expose it to heat and deny it oxygen, you're really just suffocating it. And so it's not always worth the price point on those expensive plastic organic compost bags. That said, what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill our container with this soil. You could certainly wear gloves. I never do. But we want to make sure that we're getting it nice and full, because especially as this has just come out of compression, there's a lot of surface area to it. And so if you don't fill it all the way as you're watering it in, you'll lose some of that height. And then you kind of lost your opportunity because the carrot seeds are so small, you don't want to bury them too much with too much soil. So now that I've got this nice and pressed in, I'm gonna reserve just a tiny bit to sprinkle over top. One of the rules, or general rules of thumb with seeds, is you don't really wanna bury them more than than half their depth of whatever the seed length is. So, if it's a giant bean seed or a pea seed, you're burying it about 1 inch to 2 inches. But carrots are just millimeters in length. And so you do wanna be mindful that you're not putting too much dirt over top of it, because what ends up happening is they rot out and then you have a fail, and you think it's either that your seed quality is poor or you think you failed, and really it's just the carrots didn't have a chance because they were buried too deep. The seed packet's always gonna have information on it for your zone and specifics to this variety, but if you're in Texas, pretty much anywhere in Texas, it's go time for carrots. Just do be mindful if we get one of those late season freezes, which even though it's January, we haven't had a hard freeze yet. Now with carrots, you can over sow them or broadcast sow them, which is where you're really just shaking the whole thing out. However, because this is a root vegetable that we're eating, if you sow too much at one time, you're gonna have to come back and selectively pick off the ones that sprout that would otherwise compromise the spacing. You don't want to so densely sow it that instead of getting these rigid, deep carrots, that you are now having these spindly little carrots because they didn't have any room. There's a couple of things that you can do to address that. You can be meticulous and put each little carrot seed. You can create your own seed tape. I do have a video on how to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be a little bit less vigorous in my shaking, and I'm going to show you the spacing because it's these seeds are small, but if I can show you. See how small those guys are? And so what I'm going to do, I wonder if I can do this. We're going to see if this works. Yep. Is I'm actually just going to be sprinkling these guys. Almost like if you're salting or peppering a steak, that same kind of motion. You don't have to worry about the fact that you're, pinching the seeds a little bit. They can handle it. And now, as you can see, kind of the general spacing. Now all I'm going to do is sprinkle my soil back over top of it. I'm going to try and keep it less than 1/4 inch coverage. And then I'm going to lightly tamp it. And now one last trick is I'm actually going to get an old cardboard or even brown paper bag, just a single sheet of it, put it on top of it before watering it. That's something you can do in your outdoor grow spaces too. And the reason for that, again, is because these seeds are so small. If I were to directly over pour water on top of it, it could displace the seeds. And then all of that intention that I just had with spacing is for naught. So I'm actually going to be doing kind of a carrot watch on these container carrots so that you can see as they grow. And again, because they are a shorter variety, they're going to take less time to reach maturity. So this is just a quick application for you if you are an apartment dweller, or if you do have a greenhouse, or if you, for whatever reason in this season, aren't being too ambitious, but you do want to get something in. This is a really accessible way to do so. And all in, if we're counting the price of seeds in the container and the soil that I, already had in hand, even if you purchased it, we're talking about less than $5 for this whole setup. So I just hope that helps you in your growing journey. And until next time, bye y'all.